most teams have some type of tool where they track status, at least track status of the low level things that developers are working on, maybe not status of higher level things. However, what we find is that even in using a system to track status, executives still don't have the question of when's it going to be done and where is this thing, but developers think that we have so much stuff, but it's at too low of a level. If you raise it up just a little bit to be in the middle and serve both constituencies and bridge that gap, you'll find that you'll be adding new columns to whatever work tracking system you do. Jira is popular, Azure Boards, Azure DevOps is popular, even GitHub Issues is popular, and there's plenty of others. The market is saturated with really great work tracking systems these days, but it's up to you to call out the statuses. And so in the middle, we have, oh, development's happening. We're actually working on an individual item and we're slinging code. But oftentimes an executive is just gonna ask the question, I told him that I needed new feature X by this date. It's almost that date, so I'm sure they're almost done. But that new feature may be sitting right here in user experience design if we have it specified. And what that means is executive gave the feature to the development team, assumes the development team is working on it. But guess what? The development team, there's no active work happening if we say, okay, we finally understood it, but we still have open questions about how a user is going to use it. What should it look like? What should the screen progression look like if it has screens? Or is it just a batch job? And where are we going to get this data? How is a user going to use this? And we might have some open questions about technical design. If it's there in that status and the executive doesn't know, well, then the executive is just going to assume or be asking all the time. Whereas if we have a board where everything has a place, well, then now anyone who glances at it actually gets a glimpse of the truth. And people outside the development team look at it and say, oh, there's no code even been started on this item. It's stuck back here. We have a date coming up. Let's fix that. Or they can see that, oh yeah, it's in user experience validation. That means it's probably in one of the test environments. And okay, it is code complete, and we're just making sure that it doesn't have any bugs, that type of thing. So make sure your work tracking system actually has all the necessary statuses.
Yeah, what this does is it allows you to talk about certain things at certain points in time. If I take an example of building a house, you don't start talking about paint and where the outlets are located before you dug a hole in the ground for your foundation. And so what you have to do is we know there's a process around building a house or something like that. You got to bring that same clarity to this process. So you're not having discussions early on about things that don't yet matter, that you're aligned in expectations management. And ultimately, you know, if you look at the entire thing as development, well, just code, well, you're sort of asking for a recipe, because the guys who are probably your more expensive resources who are writing code are probably writing the wrong thing, or you're going to have a lot of rework cycles. They're going to build something that you're going to find out later had user experience problems, and now you're going back to do this step. And so it's ultimately going to take longer, which is just going to be frustrating to you. So if you think about what is the process now, Jeffrey, I know we're not going to go down this road, but we're not necessarily suggesting a waterfall methodology necessarily. What we're saying is that there are certain statuses and things that have to happen for software to come together. It's not just writing code. There's lots of things that have to happen to make a successful project. Identify what those are, and those, you know, call them phase gates, call them checkpoints, call them milestones, but just make sure that those are happening. And it's not just, you know, Jeffrey, just go code. We'll run the business. You go write the code. Because a developer would say, I can do that, but the best developers I know, and there's a lot of them, they get uncomfortable writing code for things that they know is going to miss the mark. And so they want to do a good job. And so have these steps laid out so you understand that you've got these various gates you got to cross. It's not all just code.
Yep, absolutely. Now, for the stuff that is code, which there's a lot of it, it's also important for everybody in the organization on up to the executives involved and the executives who are funding the whole team to understand the technical flow for how new builds of the software are actually delivered into the organization. And this goes into the structure of the DevOps environment, which is so core to the inner developer loop and the team delivery cycle that we're constantly spinning every day, every week. And so I'm not going to go into detail. We have other webinars. We've gone into really great detail on this, but this is another resource available to you that will be a link in the chat. And this one, as well as some of the other diagrams that we showed. By the way, these are all in my latest book, .NET DevOps for Azure. That's available on Amazon. But anybody who want to request one, you can request one. We can send you an electronic copy of that book because so much of this is in the first half of every chapter before going into details about the specific tooling that we use on the Microsoft platform. So before we kind of go into the next alignment, another process is integrating an individual developer's code flow through testing and inspection and integrating back to the team so that we have all of the levels of technical quality control that are necessary. And some teams like to call it their pull request process, which is a part of it, but there is specific processes that make individual developers run on 93 octane or run at full speed and just turbocharge them. And if you don't have these processes around how an individual developer writes code, well, the team is going to move slower. And so this is a flow. We're not going to go deep in. This is a flow, and we've done other webinars on it, that is at the center and at the most detailed level of how a developer writes and submits code changes. And so it's important to get that right. And if you're an executive, make sure that your team has technical processes all the way down to this level, because if any of them are missing and you're frustrated with the pace that the team is delivering, you're just going to continue to be frustrated because they don't have enough structural process to enable them to move at the pace they need to.
This is an area where, as an executive, you don't have to know all the intricate details. All you have to know is that there should be a process for these capabilities that allows your team can take certain liberties and go implement them. And if they give you pushback as an executive, this is an area where I would push a little bit, and not to assert dominance or anything, but to say you need to have a process for this. I mean, when a bug gets fixed or identified, how are you going to fix it and know that it gets fixed well and it's not creating other problems and you're playing whack-a-mole? Ultimately, these last two slides are critical to the delivery mechanism to making your software work for you. And the best companies out there that deploy all the time have processes like these. And what it allows them to do is deliver features faster. And so we don't need to wait and do a deploy once a month. Boy, I got a feature that's done and it's gone through testing. It can go out there and start delivering value now. If I made a mistake and we decide we need to roll something back or adjust a feature, we can do that just as fast. So these things, this is where you want to make sure your engineering team has something that they can explain to you on a whiteboard, but you don't have to push and say, well, should you be using git commit push, or should you be using Subversion? You shouldn't care at that level, but just know they should have a process, and you should feel empowered as an executive to push on it. And the developers, you should be prepared to explain to your management team why they want this. And it's not just you building up a system that's, kind of obtuse. This is going to unlock value for the executive team. You got to be patient with the developers and let them build this stuff if this is what they're asking for. You want it. They're trying to serve you by a process like this.